I don't remember exactly what I printed in those slides. If I've got, I think I just have the examples printed off. So any definitions that you want, you might need to write down in your notebook now. I don't think any of these are on your definition sheet because there's not that many. So a frequency distribution basically just lists each category of data and the number of occurrences for each category. So a frequency distribution, maybe I wanted to do hair color. And so I make a chart and I list, brown, black, blonde, red, and then I put how many of you have each of those hair colors. So it's just listing the category and how many times it shows up, just a table. So let's say we're going to have snack time, we're eating some M&Ms, we open up our M&Ms. How could I break those into groups? Colors. All right, so in my bag of M&Ms, these are my colors. And I want to organize this data somehow, because that's just really annoying to look at. So I'm going to make a frequency distribution. So we need to make a column for color. It is optional. Sometimes if you have a long list of data, if you want to make a column where you can make tally marks to count things, that's fine. That's not technically a part of the frequency distribution, but if you put it in there, that's okay. So all I really have to have is the color and the frequency. But if you want to also add in tally marks just to help you, that's no problem. Okay, so my colors, I can list them in any order, but we have brown, yellow, red, orange, blue, and green. And then frequency is just how many times do I find that color? So if we start counting browns, I'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 browns. And that's where if you wanted to make tally marks, you can. It's up to you. Yellows, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 yellows. Red, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 red. Orange. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 orange. Blue. 1, 2, 3 blue. And green. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 greens. So that's a frequency distribution. Any questions about that? I may ask you to find a relative frequency. So relative frequency is just the proportion, or like the percent of observations. In other words, it would be like saying, okay, I saw brown 50% of the time. To find a relative frequency, you just take your frequency divided by the total observations. anytime you want to find a percent. It's just the part you have divided by the total. What should all my relative frequencies add to? 100%. We usually, you could do them as percents. I usually just keep them in decimal form. So 100% is what in decimal form? 1. So if we just keep these as decimals, it should always add up to 1. Now, it is possible that it may be very, very close to 1, but not equal to 1 exactly. How could that happen? Rounding error. If I get just, when you divide two numbers, does it always come out evenly? No. If it's got 15 decimal places, I'm not going to make you record all 15. You're going to round. So it could add up to 0.9999 or something like that. You might have a little bit of error there, but it should always be very, very close to 1 if it's not exact. So the second example I have on your example packet is to make the relative frequency distribution. And I'm not going to make you guys do these as separate tables. What I would do every time is just have you add it on to our frequency distribution. So I'm just going to make another column for relative frequency. Okay, how many total observations do we have? Well, that's how many different
44.
options, but the number of M&Ms would be what?
44.
Is it 44? I think it's 45. If you add all those up. Is that what you guys get? Okay. So to find our relative frequency, we're just going to do 12 over 45. Grab your calculator. I usually put these as decimals. You could technically have the fraction really either one. This one does not come out evenly. I prefer you go to 3 or 4 decimal places. It's 2.6 repeating. So I'm going to say 0.2667. Okay, so for the yellow, you're just doing 10 out of 45, which is 0.2 repeating. Red, 9 divided by 45 is 0.2. Orange, 6 divided by 45, 0.1333. Blue, and green. Does everybody understand where I got those numbers? So we can organize this information in a table. A lot of times if you're trying to present something to someone, they like visuals, right? So if we had some sort of graph, that is often easier for people to read than just trying to look at a table like this. They like that visual. So I want to talk about some of the different graphing options that we might use to represent this data. Can you guys think of any good options? A bar graph. That's a pretty basic one, but it would work great. So do you guys know how to make a bar graph? Okay, so if you were doing this, you would do not one bar graph for both. You could make a frequency bar graph or a relative frequency bar graph. They would be separate. So if I want to do the frequency bar graph, what would go across the y-axis? Yeah, the amount, the frequency. And what would be on my x-axis? Yep, the different colors. make sure we're labeling. That's our color. Frequencies, we went up to 12 was our highest. I'm just going to count by 4, or by 2. I mean. And then you just go through and you draw your bar. So brown, we had 12, so you draw that vertical bar with a height of 12. Yellow, we had 10, was it? Yes. How many reds? Orange, green, 5 greens. Yeah. Oh, I flipped them, didn't I? I had blue first on our other thing. It doesn't matter. I'll go ahead and flip it so it matches your table if you want. So we had 3 blues and 5 greens. Is that right? So that is the frequency bar graph. If I asked for the relative frequency bar graph, what would change? The y's would be over here, would be the relative frequencies. And so those we had our decimals, so we might count by like 0.05. So our labels would be 0.05, 0.1, 0.15, and so on. Now, if you are like actually going to make a presentation, are you probably going to grab a piece of paper and draw this by hand and hold it up for people? No, we're going to use technology. So let's use our Chromebooks and talk about how we would do this. Go ahead and open up Google Sheets. What I want you to do is enter that data we had in our frequency distribution. So you need to go ahead, we can put our labels, we had color and frequency. Have you used sheets to make graphs before? So a lot of you have, so this may not be anything new. I wanted to go over it just in case you haven't seen that. Once you get all of your data entered, you can just highlight it. And then you should be able to go to Insert, Chart. Now, Google Sheets will automatically come up with however they think you might want to represent your data. So they gave me a pie chart, which is one that I was getting ready to talk about in a minute. All that does is break your circle up into sectors. The area of that sector is proportional to the amount. So if it was like a relative frequency of 0.5, then that sector would take up half of your circle. If your relative frequency was 0.25, it would take up a fourth of the circle. I will never make you do a pie chart by hand. So on the test, I might ask you to make one using Google Sheets, and that's all you do. Now, we didn't want a pie chart, so if you go over here to chart type, it has suggested options, and we just wanted this bar graph. So you can click that. You can change any labels that you wanted. So maybe I don't like this title. You can just touch it and click on it, it comes up, or in your setup if you go to customize our title, maybe I want to call this M&M color instead. So we can change any of those things that we want. Does this look like the chart we did by hand? Yes. So you can always resize it, move it off to the side. Let's say I wanted the relative frequency distribution. So we could add relative frequencies to our table. You can either just type in the numbers we found for the relative frequency. You can also have Google Sheets find it for you. You guys know how to use formulas on here. You could do, if you hit equals, and then just click, we wanted the brown, so equals that divided by 45, and it gives me the relative frequency. You can drag that formula down, or mine just suggested the rest of them. Are those the same numbers we got by hand? Yes, so you can type them in by hand. You can use Google Sheets to find them for you. If I want to make my table based off that, then what I have to do is highlight my color. If you hold down Control, then you can highlight the relative frequency as well. So I don't want to highlight the frequency in the middle. Just select those two columns, and then you can insert a chart, and here is my relative frequency table. You notice it looks the same, except where's the difference? Do the first one, then hold down Control and select the second one. The only difference are these numbers on the y-axis, right? Those are my relative frequencies instead of the number of times it showed up. But the heights of all my bars are the same. Okay, raise your hand if you need any help with that. So if you're looking in the book, it talks about a Pareto chart. I'm not ever going to put this on test or quiz. All the Pareto chart does is organize them so the highest one's first and it's decreased. So whatever, you just put your frequencies in decreasing order and look at your graph that way. Okay, so it really doesn't change things. We could look at our graphs a couple different ways. We might have horizontal bars sometimes that are useful. We might be comparing data. So what I'm going to do here, it says draw a side-by-side relative frequency bar graph. Okay, so let's do this. I don't want to do it by hand. I want to do it on Google Sheets. All right, so I'm just going to delete everything out of here because I don't want to look at it. Okay, so if you've got that table in front of you, you can type from it or watch mine. So my categories, we are looking at marital status in 2 different years. If I just wanted frequency bar graphs, then I would use these numbers. But what did I ask for? I asked for the relative frequencies, didn't I? So we need the total, because we have to divide each of these numbers by the total. So you can use your calculator to add them up. You can use formulas on here. So easy way to do that, if you hit equals, I'm going to do parentheses, and then I'm going to select the ones I want to add up. Oops. Okay, ignore that. I think we have to do sum, sorry. So equals sum, and then select them. and it gives me the total. Of course, this isn't very many numbers. It's not a big deal to add them up on the calculator. Make sure you're not adding up the 1990 and 2006 in there. Those are your categories. So equals sum, parenthesis, and then just select the things you want to add together. Okay, I think it would be easiest for me to just make a new chart down here. So I'm just going to copy my titles down. For my relative frequency. You could add them as columns beside this, but basically what I want to do, you can divide these on your calculator and just type in the numbers. You can use Google Sheets to do it for you. So what you need to do is the number divided by the total. So for the never married in 1990, I'm going to click the 40.4 divided by the 181.9. And it does autofill the others. You can drag that formula down and it gives you all of the others. So for 2006, if I hit equals, I want to select that 55.3 and I want to divide it by 219.7. Again, just for a few values, if the formulas throw you, you are welcome to just do them on your calculator. Does anybody need help right now?
Yeah, you lost me on that.
For this, so I am going to select all of these, this relative frequency. So the marital status in both years, I'm highlighting it all at once. We can go to Insert Chart. Okay, and it tries to guess what we want. So under Chart Type, you can change it. I wanted a side-by-side bar graph, so I just click that and it tells me, it graphs both of them for each category right by each other. You can do a horizontal one, that's an option. Whatever is more appealing visually to you, there's not a right or wrong there, just different ways that you might do it. Okay? Yes? This is really all I have for you today. So, let me double check that I want to keep the original homework that I put up here. I had on your handout of making an example of a pie chart, but we've already done one of those, so I'm not going to put one on. We're not going to do that right now. Are just asking you to read some graphs and answer some questions. I kind of want to take off one of these because we didn't have as much time to work as I intended. All right, let's just take off 24. So you don't have to do the very last one, just do 8, 10, 14 and 17 for me. Make the graphs on your Chromebook, and then you can just share. I will make an assignment on Classroom, and you can turn in your Google Sheet there. Okay? So on your paper, you're only